Today we're going to just give you a brief overview of WizzyWeb and what the capabilities are of this web-based software. Okay, so everything is 100% web-based. There's no software to download, and so you do everything on the web with a web browser and an internet connection. So you can do it at home, from the coffee shop, from work, whatever you want to do. And so if we were to click native PHP code for MySQL and dive in and start to create an application, so I'm just going to click that, what happens in one single click with WizzyWeb is it will connect live over the web to the default demo database online here at WizzyWeb.com, which is at this host, localhost, which just means that it's the same server that the database is on, is where the code is running, which in this case is at WizzyWeb.com. So rather than say go out to some domain name like www.ibm.com, it's just going to stay at the local host. And the rest of the data here is simply the credentials that you would have to enter in order to get into the database, assuming it's password protected. In this case it is. So this is the username, the password, the name of the database, and then the database table that we want to connect to. And again, these are all just default values for the demo database to get you going as quick as possible. Again, WizzyWeb works 100% live over the internet, so we could enter any address in the entire world of a MySQL server that's running on the internet and connect to it live and work from wherever we are remotely onto that MySQL server, whether it's across the desk, across the office, or across the world. And that's something important to keep in mind. Okay, so what WizzyWeb did when we click that one link is it connected to this database called WizzyWeb_DB1, database 1, and connected to the employees table, and it figured out all the fields in the employee table, and automatically, to get you going, it created a default HTML data entry form for you. So really what you have with WizzyWeb is an application that will instantly create a complete form with one single click. So when we say applications in seconds, we're not kidding. So, and just to prove that, what we'll do here is we'll just go ahead and click the run button, which you can do at any time in WizzyWeb to actually run your application. So it's no simulation, it's not like a some sort of mock-up of your application. It's the actual application running. So we click the run button, and that generates the code and actually runs it on the server that you're working on. As you can see here, the name of this form is form, and then there's a bunch of numbers, which is simply just a random number that's generated. So if more than one person are working on the same server at the same time, they don't bump into each other's applications by having the same name. And it ends in .php, which all PHP scripts end in. So this is the actual script running live, one click. And so if we were to try and to submit this form, we would get a bunch of warnings that we didn't fill out the form. And the reason is because, again, WizzyWeb tries to do as much for you as possible to automate the mundane tasks and then leave the harder tasks to you to customize to get exactly what you want. It doesn't make you do any simple work that is just kind of a given boilerplate of what you would do when you are creating a web application. And now we're going to show you how to save an application. We'll get into creating applications much deeper later on. This lesson is to, simply say, how does WizzyWeb work in general? What are the basic features, and how do you go about creating web applications? Let's say that we were done creating our application. So of course we'd want to save it. Now there's two different options. One is you can simply click Save, and as we said earlier, WizzyWeb will use an XML file to store the web application, and here it is here. So this is the XML representation of the data entry application, and you don't need to know what all these fields are. You're free to go in and look, and you can even change things if you want to, and that will change the application when you open it back up in WizzyWeb. But normally you would just leave it alone, and you would select all and then copy it, and then you would open up your favorite text editor which in my case is good old Notepad, and I'm just going to paste that into Notepad. So now we have the XML file which represents the entire application. That's also known as full fidelity, so it's all the different elements which make up the application, so you can open it back up in WizzyWeb and work on it at any time. So you would just save this to your local computer using Save As you would any file, and save it to your desktop or My Documents or wherever you want to save it to. And one of the values of being able to save your file is you don't have to create your entire application in one session. You could do half of it, save it, and then open it up later and finish it. You could also start your application and you could send the application to somebody else to finish if you didn't have time to finish, or if you were working with somebody else. Okay. So that's one option of saving. And then the other option of saving, of course, is to generate the code, and this will generate the finished code for your application. So we simply click the code button and we enter our username and password, click the enter button, and rather than generate the XML file, it generates the actual, again, native PHP code for MySQL. So again, you would select all, copy, and paste that into your favorite text editor, and now you have the actual native PHP source code. And I'm just going to scroll to the top, and this is the PHP code that looks basically identical to what it would look like if you were a experienced PHP programmer writing this code from scratch. And so if you just scroll down, you can look at, it's quite a bit of code that is generated for you automatically. And if you wanted to, you could modify the source code if you're a PHP programmer and make it do some advanced things for you. Again, that's the value of having standard code generator generating PHP code and not some other funky language like Cold Fusion. Okay, one other thing that we will mention is at any time regarding getting help, each property over here is underlined. So at any time, if you want to know what something is or what it does, simply click on it, and that will link you to the associated help for that property. So you would just read that and then get an idea, and for each property you get an example of what you might enter there to help you along, and then you simply click the backlink and it brings you right in. One of the best things of all about WizzyWeb is it is free. So that is the basics of WizzyWeb, and on the next lesson we'll dive in and we will create a data entry application from start to finish, now that you know the basics of WizzyWeb.